Stay tuned to the video if you want your dash to look like this. Nice paint, nice gauges, all working correctly without burning your tractor down. So, today's video, I'm going to show you how to hook up an ammeter and a voltmeter to your tractor or other kind of equipment. Luckily, mine was already equipped from the factory with an ammeter, so I'll just be replacing it basically, but I will show you how it gets wired in and what you need to account for. Same thing with the voltmeter, I'll show you how that gets wired in and everything. Also doing a little bit of rehabilitation on the dash. It was starting to get rusty in some spots, so took some sandpaper to it, covered up the spots I didn't want to sand, like where you have your ignition stuff, where it says fast, stop, you know, your lights, choke. It says garden tractor on the top, so I figured I'd keep that as well. Gonna be painting it with this duplicolor engine enamel, silver, chrome silver, aluminum. Nice and shiny, same thing I painted my gauge pod with. So I'll be showing you how this all gets done. Stay tuned. So one of the first things you're going to need to do is drill through your dash panel to mount these gauges. If you're doing it on your Craftsman GT6000 or whatever else you got. Some people just put in a gauge pod and that's it. But you really want the back end of that supported by the wood when you cut through that with the hole saw, because if not, it's going to keep hanging up, it's going to bend this, it's going to do all kind of stuff that you don't want to do. So to keep it nice, flat, and straight, the way it came from the factory, you have to support it from behind. So support it, then you get your assortment of clamps, and you clamp it to this piece of wood. Hopefully you have your drill press, because if not, good luck. It's going to suck, but you could do it. Just set the clutch low on the drill so you're not ripping your arm out. Then after you get that done, you're going to want to tape up everything that you want kept, and then cut it out with your little razor blade here. I use this, and just go around that very carefully. And then once you do that and you have these all covered up and cut out, then you can go and sand, because you don't want to sand like your ignition symbols off and stuff like that. At least I didn't want to. Kept this rabbit and turtle shit, and this headlight stuff, the choke, garden tractor, where it says it up top. So then you get your sandpaper, scuff it up. Then you get your wax and grease remover. That stuff right there. And you want to wipe that down pretty well so the paint will actually stick to it. I don't have any primer. I'm just using that engine enamel. Should be good enough. But that is something you guys are going to want to do. Make sure you support it from behind and tape up all your stuff before you sand it and paint it. Alright, now we'll get to the wiring section. Alright, I finished up the wiring on my dash here and painting it, so now I'll show you guys the wiring schematic I drew up on how I routed all that wiring for it and powered it. So we got the keyed on ignition source here. This comes from your alternator right here, this wire. You ground it when you go to start it. That starts it up. Now you get what power going to this red wire here. There's your ammeter there. Your ammeter goes from this keyed on ignition source, which originates from your alternator there. Keyed on ignition source all the way to basically the positive terminal on your battery. This one uses a starter solenoid positive terminal because it's closer, I guess. What you want to do, and you have the fuse here. This fuse is important. This is your main fuse for your entire tractor. So when you go to wire in your voltmeter, this VM here, you want to do that before this fuse and before your ammeter, so that it's reading the draw that this puts on your alternator. You have your 12 gauge wire going from here that I used 12 gauge for, and you want to make sure that this is fused, because when you have this power wire coming off of here, if you don't have this fused, you basically just have a live wire that if you get an overload on the system and that wire burns, it could set your tractor on fire. You know, it'd just be sparking anywhere to ground. This positive wire would go anywhere to ground on your tractor and just start sparking, so you don't want that. Make sure you have it fused before your voltmeter and your oil temp light. So I used a 7.5 amp fuse just because I have two things on here. I got the oil temp light for my oil temperature gauge, just an incandescent bulb. Use 16 gauge wire for that. This main fuse holder wire was 12 gauge on both sides, and I just teed off it again from the 12 gauge wire, and I connected these two wires together just on one side of the butt connector. Have that 14 gauge wire going from your voltmeter down to the negative side of your battery. So you just want this going to ground. So basically you just have it going from your keyed on positive ignition source to your ground. You just have to make sure you have a fuse in there, because like I said, you'll burn your tractor down if you don't put a fuse in there and you get an overload and your wire burns out. So definitely don't want that happening. You can see the fuse holder right there. Got the butt connectors. I just have the oil temp gauge light and the voltmeter positive wire right there. Then there's the ground wire coming out, going to your battery. If you want to know what size wire to use, drew up this little graph here. So 10 gauge wire will do 30 amps at the lowest for lowest quality wire. 12 AWG 12 gauge wire will do 25 amps. 14 gauge wire 20 amps. 16 gauge wire 18 amps. Now this is information that I got from this very helpful book that my grandfather gave me, and I'll show you right here. So I just use these tables, the wire size. You know, you guys could pause it if you want to take some information from that, just so you have it for yourselves, but very helpful. This tells you your current capacity, your ampacity, how many amps your wire can transfer through it without burning up at a certain temperature and all that. So interesting stuff. I'll take you in for a closer look just so you get an idea of how I did all this. So right, you got positive side on your voltmeter. It says I for ignition source, I plus. Now this voltmeter has a light in it as well, and that G minus, that's the ground. So it uses a shared ground for the light and for the ignition source, or for the voltage source. So shared ground for the light and the voltage source. So put your keyed on ignition wire here, and then you put your ground wire there. There's your green ground wire. Basically just have it going from right from the ground post there, and then you have it go to your negative terminal, which I still got to hook up. Put these two wires together. This is I'm using the light circuit that I have for my oil temp gauge light. Just using the light circuit power, or I mean the light circuit ground. that's just teed into there at the battery. So this goes to the battery, and this goes to your negative on your voltmeter. So negative voltmeter, negative side of the battery, just a short lead going to your post there. So that is it for the wiring. For these gauges, I used a 1/16 U-type rubber edge trim, and that worked good to, it has glue on the inside as well, and little metal strips off Amazon. My grandpa got it. And there's the amp meter there with the trim around it, and then, you know, I have it cut out for the garden tractor. So that's it, just to keep them held in there. And I also have the cage on the back side holding that gauge in. So if you hook your ammeter up backwards, like say you put one positive side that on the other positive side, all it will do is this, when you turn on your lights, it's going to read like it's charging. It's going to read positive. When you turn off, when you turn on your lights, it's supposed to read negative, like it's a draw on the system. That's what it's reading. That's what your ammeter does. It reads a draw on the system. So if it goes positive when you turn your lights on, you just have your ammeter hooked up backwards. So just switch out those two wires on the ammeter there, if you did that on the positive side, because one goes to the positive terminal on your battery basically, and the other side goes to the generator, your alternator there. And that's basically it. You know, I just have it keyed off the key on positive side of that, if it'll focus. Positive side of that, whatever you call that, your lock cylinder, your key cylinder. So when you turn it on, it turns your gauges on, because you don't want it running all the time. So your ignition switch will have a little diagram here. Just look up your manual for your model of your tractor, and it'll give you all these positions. So circuit M plus G, B plus L, B plus S plus L. So you just use that, and use the on B plus L for the ammeter and the voltmeter. So that's it. Looks good, nice and shiny. So I think that's it. And then I have my oil temp gauge. I still got to do a video on that. Do that eventually, but that's it for now. I'll put this all together, and then I'll be back. You guys could see it when it's all nice. So, quick tip for installing this gauge. So you want to make this hole pretty tight with this rubber seal. You don't want to drill it out too big with your hole saw. So I use some of this Sil Glide just because it's real old. I got a bunch of it left over. Put it around your gauge pod in the back before you put it in here, and then you can get a nice tight fit, and it'll go in easily without pulling this rubber weather stripping all the way through. There's a lot of tension like I have on mine, so I don't have an extra cage for this one, so I just made it pretty tight. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Lubricating compound before I put it in there. Alright, so like I said, you got your ground and your ignition keyed on, G minus, I plus. Alright, I'll tune back in when I have it all together. Alright, so there's the dash all put together. Got the voltmeter working and on. Battery's strong, over 12 volts, so that's good. It's been sitting for a while. You can see, watch the amp meter go down with the headlights. Just a little bit. So that's how you know you have it hooked up right. When it goes left, minus, with load, you have it hooked up right. If it goes positive with the load, you have it hooked up backwards, which isn't a problem. You just got to do it. Rewind it, reverse it, won't damage the gauge. And there's the oil temp gauge there. Just says water temp because that's the only gauge I had. Got the power and the ground wire for that. And I'll show you what it looks like in the back with it all hooked up. So you could see the orange and the green wire come down off my oil light, the oil temperature gauge light. And that goes around to the back. And that goes over to the voltmeter. If this thing would focus. There we go. That goes over to the voltmeter, the orange and the green wire. That orange wire is a separate wire off the fuse holder, not from the oil temp gauge light. But that green wire is the ground wire off the... It connects to the same ground wire off the oil temp gauge light. So this one is the oil temp gauge light ground, and the other one is the voltmeter ground. And then I have that connected right at the battery there. Nice and tidied up. Then I have the fuse holder just on the side there. So with the two spliced wires coming off there. Smaller orange wire goes to the oil temp gauge light. The larger orange wire goes to the voltmeter. You can see it in the back there, kind of. Alright, that's pretty much it for this. Turn off this light. That's about it for this, so. See, there's the light, oil temp gauge. I just have it come on with the key. But, looks good. Now it's not going to continue to rust, so. That's how you hook up a voltmeter and an ammeter on a tractor or whatever else uses the same style of charging system. So, there you go. Let me know what you guys think. Comment down below.